Let's see, Monica is joining today. All right, so today on our live discussion, our 10 a.m. live discussion with Creative Industries for our Creative Industry season, we have Jeff Anderson with Arts Hub and myself, Arla Nelson, the Creative Industry Coordinator. And also joining us that's been really consistent in attending is Monica Bowling.
Hi, Monica.
Hey, how are you? Nice to meet you.
Same here. Nice to meet you.
Um, so Jeff, my first question is, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to start your business or your organization and kind of get you on your creative journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm a theater artist and actor, director, sometimes designer, and went to University of New Mexico right here in Albuquerque to get a degree in theater education. And when I was graduating, a cohort of us actually started a theater company that's still running. I'm not a part of it anymore, but they're still doing amazing stuff called Blackout Theater. And worked worked with Blackout for a little over a decade, creating devised work. So an ensemble of theater creators creating work and then performing it, doing a mix of live performances, videos, immersive interactive theater, more traditional theater, kind of everything in between. But as we were working and as we were going, we realized that a lot of creatives, either rightly or just because of perceptions, right, felt like they had to move out of New Mexico. They felt like, there's just not there's no way to make a living here. So I got to move to New York or LA or Chicago, the big theater hubs in the United States. But then we also saw people who were successfully making a living here, right? And so we saw some sort of disconnect between the perceived opportunities and what was actually happening. And so when I left Blackout and another person who helped start Blackout left at the same time, we started talking about, like, how can we keep theater artists here and help them understand the opportunities that are going on. And we started talking to creatives and realized this is an issue across all mediums, right? Creatives from all different mediums are don't necessarily perceive Albuquerque or New Mexico more broadly as a place where they can necessarily make a living and stay here doing the work that they want to do. So that's kind of the catalyst for Arts Hub, right? We started um, asking creatives. We did a whole sector assessment in 2019 and released a report in 2020 about what are the issues and barriers that creatives are facing. And it was a mix of, a mix of real actual barriers, monetarily or structural supports, and also the perceptions of what resources were actually available, or even the knowledge of what resources were actually available. And so from that, we started building out programming. We launched the report on March 1st of 2020. And then 12 days later, everything changed, right? Because that's when the state shut down because of COVID. And so we did, virtual programming for the first couple of years, and then got back into live programming. And we do a whole myriad of things that support creatives from the opportunities to learn about professional how to work professionally as a creative or build your own creative business, to opportunities to present and perform your art, to opportunities to be a teaching artist and work with youth and help bring up the next generation, and opportunities to use your art in other sectors. Like we've worked with cities on their long-term development process and infusing arts-based strategies to engage the community into that. Worked with schools to engage their community with the art, and things like that. So yeah, it just kind of came from a realization as working artists ourselves, that artists need more support and need very specific things, right, to help make sure that they can stay here and create art in the way they want to create here in New Mexico.
I agree with that. That's one of the hardest things, even something that we're doing here at Creative Industries is seeing is that concept, right? That
Yeah.
ideology of I cannot make it in New Mexico for some reason, and it's in so many ways, from that to tech to coding to so many other ways. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
this is really the prime location for that. If you can
Yeah.
get ahead, you can really be a driver in that industry if you really looked at it in a different light, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot like one of the things we see a lot in like tech companies who are maybe trying to move in to start open up operations here. They're like, oh, there's not enough infrastructure or not enough like trained people in that industry. With the creatives, it's the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's tons of infrastructure. It's kind of piecemeal, right? But there's a lot of it, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of trained workers, for lack of a better word, right? And to put it in economic terms, right? There's a lot of trained workers in the arts industry. I know New Mexico or Albuquerque, at least the latest data I saw, Albuquerque alone is one of the top 13% metro areas for arts and culture workers in the entire country. And I'm sure like Santa Fe's higher, and Silver City probably has a ton, and Taos
Yes.
has a ton, and there's all kinds of creatives all over. And now with stuff like the creative industries division, which is really cool, now there's some more infrastructure and like systemic support that's starting to take place, which is really exciting. I think you can really uh, kickstart the industry here, especially in the way artists view it.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, my next question is, how has New Mexico's creative landscape influenced your work and approach to collaboration?
I think New Mexico, and I'm starting to realize this more and more as we meet other creatives from outside of New Mexico. But one of the things that New Mexico, I think, really has that other places don't is it's less about competition, and it is more about collaboration, right? Now, I think one of the things we found in our sector assessment is there are a lot of silos, and people don't necessarily talk to each other, and it's not out of like, oh, I don't want to talk to you. It's just there haven't been those pathways and infrastructure to like make those intentional connections. But everyone is super excited when another creative succeeds, right? I
Mm-hmm.
we host an annual performing arts festival, and we bring some folks from out of state in to perform it. And one constant thing we've heard every single year is it's like, wow, this whole scene is so supportive of each other. Everyone wants everyone to succeed, and that is not the case wherever they come from, and that's true across the
Mm-hmm.
country. I've had people from New Orleans, LA, Atlanta, New York, Chicago, Seattle, like pretty much anywhere someone comes from. They're like, wow, the scene here is really supportive, and you all want to build each other up. It's kind of a high tides lift all boats mentality. And that's the way we approach it with Arts Hub, and that's the way I approach it as an artist, right? As a theater artist, when I see another theater company or theater artist like do something cool that gets a lot of attention, it's like, oh heck yes! One, awesome for them because they're creating cool work that people are recognizing, and two,
Mm-hmm.
awesome for the scene as a whole because everyone who's going to see their work is probably like, there's some cool stuff happening. What else is happening in the area? Um, and so it's really beautiful, and I think that's New Mexico just it doesn't have a lot of money relative to a lot of other states, right? But
Mm-hmm.
what we have is that community and that collaboration, that connection, and it's a really undervalued asset, I think. And people rec- people recognize it when they come into the community and be like, oh wow, I wish my community was like that, and that fills me with a lot of pride and a lot of uh, excitement about you know how we're building collectively building the creative sector here in New Mexico.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And that's like one of the things that I always say, because not being from New Mexico and now going on my 10 years of living here, it's one of those things where you can go throughout the whole state. And now, especially since I've been in this position, I've definitely been seeing it where everybody is willing to just genuinely want to see you be a part of their community and support it. As long as you're doing that, then it's fine. But when you don't do it, that's another problem
Yeah.
where like New Mexico will retaliate, and that's a great thing because it's like you got to get vetted, right? You can't just come in and just do whatever you feel like you want to do. You can't bring Atlanta to Albuquerque or Santa Fe or Silver City or Hobbs or anywhere else. You have to understand what Hobbs is like, what Albuquerque's like, what the whole scene is like, and then see how do you integrate your new idea or innovation into it. But it's definitely
Absolutely.
understanding that it got to be community buy-in.
Oh my gosh, so much, and I think it's beautiful, right? Because that's the in my and this is
It is.
definitely opinion, but in my opinion, that's the point of art, right? Is it's so the community can talk about itself to itself and investigate itself, and obviously it also opens the doors for people from other communities to come in and do the same. But it's in New Mexico, it's hyper localized in a really beautiful way, because theater can only happen in a specific place. An art gallery can only happen in a specific place, right? Like the art might move or a theater might have touring, but like they're happening here and now.
Mhm.
And it's such a cool way for the community to have a conversation and be able to build its own identity too, which I think is really important.
Yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to say too, you said something about silos, and I think one of the things that I've seen in state level is people just don't know they're in silos. I think one of the things that I had to learn is how much I was in a bubble, not knowing I was in a bubble,
Yeah,
and just who the people I was talking to, and then you might bump into other bubbles. I always use bubbles as a good analogy, but
yeah,
you might bump into another bubble. It might be connected for a little bit, then it splits off, and you go back to doing your own thing. So it is hard to when you don't think about what you're really doing, um, to think about where you need to go to add more collaboration and more community in and find more spaces because I think especially right now, we're in a epidemic of loneliness from what they're saying right now and just data and information
yeah.
where you can see the collectives and spaces like Arts Hub because I know when I was a part of Arts Hub in 2023, I believe,
I think
uh,
that's right.
that was like a good sense of seeing a creative community of people who were doing some similar things like I was and also still being business focused too, because I think that's one of the other elements we don't think about a lot as creators is what is the real infrastructure needed for yourself to
Yeah,
really capitalize on the infrastructure around you.
yeah. Absolutely, because it takes time and effort to engage with all the different pathways, and it's hard to think about that and build that into like, all right, it's time, and part of my creative practice is to connect to all those different pathways. And it's not necessarily just the time you spend creating and presenting your work. It's also the time spent building this community and plugging yourself in where it makes sense.
Yeah, and putting value to your work because I like the
Yeah,
you said creative building your work. I think one of the things is like put sell the piece for $100, sell it for 1,000 that you put into it if that's what
yeah.
the value of what it is to you. So I definitely I agree with what you're saying there. Now, what advice would you give to creatives who want to collaborate but don't know where to start?
It's a complicated question, and I think there's a reason why a lot of folks who like want to start getting into it don't know exactly what to do, right? Because it's a little bit different depending on one where you're at, right? What community are
Hmm.
you in? What medium you work in, and who you want to collaborate with, right? Like, so I think most applicable, broadly applicable advice I can give is in that last bit, like who do you want to collaborate with?
Hmm.
If you're trying to collaborate with other artists and create things that you know either you're a musician wanting to work with another musician to create really cool music, or maybe you're a visual artist, a painter or a sculptor, and you want to work with a photographer and help them get some really cool pictures, but also have some pictures where you can display your own stuff, right? Regardless of that, I think the number one thing is go see each other's work. Go out
Hmm.
there, get involved, right? Artists love talking about work, their own and others, right? Artists love talking about like, ooh, like how did you make that? What's the creative practice you use? Was it me what inspired it, right? Why do you create what you create? It's really interesting conversations. And if you're an artist, you know how good it feels to have other artists come to your show and be like, this is cool, right?
Yeah,
It's one thing to have and like, don't get me wrong, I love it when like the general public comes to a theater performance, like, wow, I was really touched, and I'm like, yeah, that's a good feeling. But when another theater artist comes and is like, wow, that was really cool, and I appreciated this about your work, like, there's something special about that, right? And
yeah,
so that's the number one thing. Go see work. Go see as much work as you can, and connect with the artists when you see the work, right? And don't do it with an agenda. Don't do it with like I'm trying to get something out of you or I'm trying to like do something. It's just like, hey, your work is cool and interesting and meaningful to me. I'd love to keep in touch. And then organically over time, opportunities to collaborate will show up, right? Because artists are creative. Artists love to artists don't like to do the same thing over and over and over and over again typically. And so if you have that organic relationship, something's going to happen where I was like, oh, I want to go in this direction, but I don't have. Oh wait, I know Ireland, and Ireland's really great at this, so I'm going to talk to Ireland. We're going to have a cool conversation. Um,
Hmm.
I think that's the best inroad, right, for individual collaborations. When artists are wanting to collaborate with an organization, and I'll speak mostly from like a nonprofit standpoint because that's what I'm most familiar with.
Hmm.
I think one of the biggest misunderstandings we get is like the timeline that organizations work on, right? Because it's different than the timeline that individuals work on. As a nonprofit, like our fiscal year is July through June, right? And so we have a budget that we make, and it's solidified by the end of May for the entire next 12 months, right? It's solidified by
Hmm.
the end of May for the next July through June cycle. And we've done that based on, the grants we've been able to raise, the donations we've been able to get, the income we got from ticket sales or whatever. And that's the money we have, right? And that's the resources we have. And we've allocated our resources and our staff time and our whatnot by that point.
Hmm.
And so when someone comes in and like uh December and it's like I have a thing I want to collaborate on in February, right? In like 2 months. Even if it's a really cool thing, we just might not have the capacity to
Hmm.
work to collaborate in that short of a time frame because our resources are already allocated. And most nonprofits, regardless of the size, but we're pretty small, but especially small nonprofits, right? They're working at the very edge of their resources, right? So there's not so it's like even if something seems like a small ask, it might not be because that's additional money or additional staff time that just we just don't have. And it's not necessarily a comment on the quality or excitement or whatever we have about collaborating with this person. It's just the reality of time and money. And so, but if someone came out to us in December and was like, "Hey, next year I have this thing, and I'd love to talk to you about collaborating. It's going to happen in like September or October next year. What a great time to start talking about it." And
Hmm.
and that's a great way to start a conversation. And we're also unique, right? We're not like a nonprofit theater company that does shows or nonprofit art gallery that presents artwork. Um, our whole goal is to support creatives and help them do their own work. Um, so we're a little bit different, but I think the same concept still applies broadly. If you
Yeah.
if you're a theater artist and you want to work with this nonprofit theater company, again, go to their shows, start
Hmm.
talking to them, and understand that they probably planned their entire season out well in advance, right? Galleries, I know lots of galleries are like, yeah, we have the next 13 months booked because we have to
Hmm.
plan, we have to write grants, we have to solicit donations, and we have to tell them what we're doing. And if we don't know what we're doing, we don't get the money and we shut down. And so yeah, I think understanding, go to each other's work, go see each other's work, and then also
Hmm.
understanding everyone works on a different time frame, right? Some people, and especially individuals, and maybe some organizations can be like, oh heck yes, in 2 months we can do that. But
Yeah.
if someone tells you like, oh, we just don't have the resources right now or capacity right now, don't take that as like a knock on you or your work. It's more of like, let's maybe keep this conversation going for later.
Yeah. Yeah, that like don't take it personal. And I can definitely say that's the same thing from the government's perspective, or at least state government, is roughly the same thing too when it comes down to the fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends in at the end of June. So when you're coming to talk to us and kind of in July and August, we already kind of have a plan of what we're already going to do with the money beforehand. So it is to say if you have like you said, the example of if you have something that you want to do the next year and you're talking in December, November, September, or any of those times, that is the best time to sponsorships and think about what other opportunities that you can do in collaboration and partnership with a I would say with an entity, nonprofit or government, is definitely thinking like that, even with your city municipalities.
Totally.
All right. So how do you think creative businesses in New Mexico can work together to grow not just individually, but collectively as well?
So I think kind of goes back to that thing about the most powerful asset we have, and it's one of the best in the entire country, is our collective um, want to see everyone succeed, right? To see the
Hmm.
sector succeed, to want to work together. and our deficit, right, if you want to think of it that way, is like just money, right? And yes, it's cost of everything's a little bit cheaper here than it is in New York or California. um but we do have, we have significantly fewer foundations that support the arts
Mhm.
in New Mexico. We have we have a lower number of really rich people who want to just give money to the arts, right? Which on one hand, bummer, right? Because oh man, $100,000 grant for an artist to create work over a year in New Mexico it would go so far, right? It would do
Mhm.
amazing stuff. But on the other hand, I will say too that like people clamor for that stuff, but then you see where the foundations and the people with a lot of resources then kind of start dictating the kind
Yeah.
of work that happens. And so it's kind of a you give up a little bit to get
Mhm.
those kind of resources, and it's a bummer. Because I've connecting nationally, I've seen folks be like, yeah, we don't really want to do this anymore, but our biggest funder gives us, $300,000 every year to do this work. And I guess so we have to do it, right? And so there is a
Yeah.
trade-off, and it kind of puts you into a box. If you start getting like, because when the reality is when people give you a lot of money, they start expecting you to do the things their way, right?
Exactly.
Not everyone, and that's not ubiquitous, but like that's I've seen it a lot. Um,
Mhm.
so I think the thing that we need to think about is how do we use our resources collectively, right? Lots of people, there's lots of like buildings and spaces that might be available, and like one person, one artist, or one group of artists can't really afford it by themselves, or maybe they don't have enough work to like, right? Maybe they're going to be presenting, like maybe there's an arts collective that has enough generates enough work to do like 4 to 5 months of gallery openings every
Mhm.
year, right? Well, that's not really enough to buy a space or rent a space for an entire year. But if you got three of those coming together,
Yep.
then it's cheaper for everyone. It's a bunch of different collectives, and so that kind of breaks down those silos on its own, right? And it's audience sharing, right? Because the one thing I've seen, and I think this is true in most arts, but especially in performing arts, right? Like audiences go to the performing arts companies or the performing artists or musicians or whatever that they know and love, right?
Mhm.
um, when I was working with Blackout Theater, it blew my mind. We would go to other theater companies who do relatively similar work, and I'd stand back there with the other artistic director and be like, I see none of these people in my shows, and I see none of the people come to our shows in your audience. How do we fix that? And one of the things that's worked really well is when you share space, right? Because then
Mhm.
um, you can collectively advertise, you can share the cost of the rent and utility. If people come to a space and see cool work, then they're like, well, all right, even though this isn't the same collective or same group of artists, next time I'm comfortable going to that space. And if they're recommending, and if they work closely enough with that other group, then there must be something to it, right? And so you start getting those audience and community crossovers.
Yeah.
So I think it's finding creative ways, right, to share space, to share resources, to share infrastructure, right? Like again, one nonprofit might not be able to hire a full-time grant writer or CPA to manage their books, but is there a way that five nonprofits can get together and have one CPA who's
Yeah,
helping them with all
retainer.
their books, right?
Mhm.
And they can afford to have a professional manage their books. Are there collectives out there that can, that are collectives out there that maybe one of them has space, maybe one of them has access to a ton of resources, maybe one is really tapped into marketing avenues. Like what a
Mhm.
great collaboration that would be, right? You bring that all together, and that's powerful. Whereas separately, it's like one person can shout to the world about their work, but they don't have space or materials. One person has all the materials to create it, but they don't have the space and they don't know how to get out there. One person has the space, but no one comes. They don't have material, right? So like it can really, I think that collective resource and really thinking, you know, essentially it's action. It's putting into action that sense of like high tides float all boats, right? It's like yes,
Mhm.
beyond like I'm excited for you to work. It's like how can we both mutually benefit each other, and how can we both build up our work and our audiences and share our resources so that we're not as strapped and we can do more cool stuff.
I think that's the other key word you said is mutual benefit. I think
Hmm.
a lot of people don't look at it like that. And just going back to thinking about relationships, like, going back to science, seventh grade science and thinking, what is a parasitic relationship? What's a mutually beneficial? And a lot of
Yeah,
people, you do it from a parasitic lens in a lot of ways of collaboration that kind of can bring a bad taste of wanting to collaborate at times, right? And then it's also getting out the mindset of thinking you got to do everything on your own. Because
yeah,
you can go somewhere fast by yourself, but if you want to go somewhere far, it's gonna take a group of people, right?
yeah. Absolutely. And you make a really good point there too. Like when someone comes up and proposes a collaboration, and they obviously they're going to talk about what they need, right? Because that's why they're there. But when they bring up like, I noticed you do this, this, and this, and we could help with this, this, and this, like it's like, oh, you've taken the time to like think about it and be very thoughtful about this collaboration. And even if they're like a little off or they misperceive something, I'm much more interested in having a conversation with that person, because I know that like we're going to be benefiting each other, and they're not just coming
Mm.
like, "Hey, help me, give me stuff and resources," right? Which sometimes, right? Yeah, I get it. Like you're in an emergency or whatnot, and like totally cool, and like
Exactly.
whatever. But generally, if someone's like, "Hey, this is a thing I have, and I'd love to do this. I've noticed you do this, and here's a way I thought we could collaborate. But let's have a conversation, see how we can work together." Oh my gosh, it creates beautiful stuff whenever that someone approaches a collaboration like that.
Yeah, give like oh I just it just popped in my head to say it, but giving people grants and not loans, right? Like
Mm-hmm,
making it
mm-hmm.
making it be something that we both can achieve instead of just I get something in return, or I know I'm gonna
Totally.
get something back out of it and it's a requirement. So I only got two
Absolutely.
more questions for you. I'm going to have
Mhm.
one more specific question, which is going to be what role do you see technology like social media, virtual events, AI playing in fostering collaboration in creative communities?
It is a complicated question, right? There's a lot of things there. On one hand, man, I it's social media algorithms in particular are tricky,
Yes.
and they change constantly by design, right? They're it's there to keep you like trying to constantly figure out like how do I say things, and like it's a constant way to engage from there, and they just want to keep you hooked on this on their
Mhm.
app, right?
Yeah.
But from your end, you're like, like I have to constantly, and everyone's there, so I have to use it, right? um and so on one hand, I'm like, man, if we could all just collectively be like, no, no more social media, stop. That would be my ideal, but that's not going to happen. And so I think it's kind of similar, right? You got to build a community, and there is
Mhm.
something too about like you build a connection community in person, and
Yes.
you're gonna that connection on social media becomes that much stronger, right?
I agree.
I know people I've only connected with on social media. Sometimes their stuff will pop up, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that person kind of vaguely, right? And like we had a connection on social media, or I saw a video they did or whatever, and like, oh yeah, but then they go away, right? But I see someone
Hmm.
pop up who I met at an event or whatever. I'm like, oh, that person. Oh yeah, they do cool work. Oh yeah, I'm gonna dig into their page. I'm gonna look into it. I'm gonna
Hmm.
and then the algorithm's like, oh, you like this person, so they're gonna send me more anyway. Um, but I think yeah, it's how to leverage that in-person connection with the social media, right? How do you because
Yes.
in the end, we don't have control over the social media. We don't have control of the algorithms. We don't have
Yeah.
control over how our stuff is seen, who sees it, any of that. And so it's a great way. So social media, I think in particular, is a great broad way, right? It's a very
Hmm.
broad. It's like casting a wide net and be like, here's my stuff. Um, and if you're really good at hacking the algorithms and becoming an influencer, like more power to you. Like keep it up.
Hmm.
That's amazing. I'm not good at that. I'm terrible at that. Um, but so in that case for me it's like it's a broad net, right? Whoever sees this event or this thing is going to see it and like cool, great.
Hmm.
But you also have to leverage right email lists and social
Yes.
media and different social media platforms, and you have to know where your audience is. Are they on TikTok? Are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Are they
Hmm.
on certainly what is some other social media stuff that's come up that I don't know about, right? Where are they, right? And then you got to tailor, right? And so it's I think to like expectations, like modifying your expectations for social media is really important, because we get so many people who come through our fellowship program. You're like, social media, that's the key. And if I can just get on social media, I want to sell, right? And that's not necessarily true. You have to know how to sell on social media. You have to know how to build those connections, keep people engaged with your content, which are all, and that changes constantly because the algorithm changes constantly. Um, So yeah, so it's right. It's like it's a useful tool, but it also, unless you're just a master influencer, it's going to be hit or miss. But it kind of keeps you in the consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think stuff like virtual events is really powerful, especially in a state like New Mexico, where
Hmm.
like this, right? Like anyone can see this across the state, and they didn't have to, drive to Albuquerque where I'm at, and they didn't have to, come from Silver City all the way to Albuquerque, and you can save this, right? So people can come and engage with it at their leisure when it makes sense
Find it
for
on social
them.
media, find it wherever they want to, pretty much where it meets them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It meets them where they're at, which is very cool, and I think a really strong accessibility tool in a lot of ways. So there's good and bad with right social media. AI also complicated. I don't think we know what we're doing with it yet as a
Yes.
species, let alone as an art sector, right? Uh, there's terrible things about it, right? It hoovers up data and it hoovers up artists' images and and then churns it out as their own. Which on that side, like that's bad, right? Like man, like AI generated artwork, you
Mm,
can tell it's AI generated artwork, right?
100%.
It makes mistakes. It looks sloppy when you start looking at the details. It's pretty from like you stand far back and you just kind of look at it as like, wow, those colors are pretty. But that's what AI generated art typically at this point does, like, ooh, pretty colors that work well together. It knows how to do color
Pixelated picture.
palettes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Closer you get up on it, you see it's not nothing really, but like
yeah.
far away, it's like, oh no, that was wonderful.
Ooh, yeah, yeah, 100%. Um, but there, I think if we don't figure out how to use it as a sector, um, well, I think as artists, like other people are going to figure out how to use it, right? It's
Yes.
one of those things. Like I remember when social media started coming up, and people were like, "Oh, just it's a fad; it'll go away, like whatever." But the artists who adopted it early really saw their work pick up, right? And they really
Mm,
figured out how to do it. And so I don't have an answer for AI, and I don't think anyone really does. But be careful with it, right? And I think it can be a useful tool. Um, Things I've seen folks use is like, just give me generalized feedback on my work, especially writers, right? Give me generalized feedback on my work. What do you know? And you can take the notes and whatnot, but it's not like taking somebody else's work and then producing something and calling it its own, right? It's
mhm.
looking at your work and saying like, here's what I see as an AI machine, right? So you also have to take that with a grain of salt. Like it's
Yes,
still a machine. It's not a person. It's not, you're not trying to like, it doesn't know how to emotionally connect with the work you're giving, but it can give
exactly.
technical feedback. You can be like, oh, this part of your story, like you're missing something here, right? I don't know how you got from point A to point B, right? So I've seen artists use it in that way effectively. From like a grant writing point of view, it can be a really effective like assistant editor kind of thing, right? Like here's the grant uh parameters and what they were looking for. Here's my answer. Do you think it fits it? And again, taking it with a grain of salt, of course, but yeah, so I think like with AI, it's in infancy and truly like this isn't actually artificial intelligence. It's just really complicated algorithms. Like they don't really learn. Um, and so it's not even really AI yet. It will be probably soon, but it's not quite there. Um, and so yeah, so I think just be careful, figure out how to ethically use it. Don't so it's not like stealing other people's work and then churning it out for something you own. And also don't just use it to create stuff and then call it your own. Like definitely don't do that, right? Um,
Mhm.
uh, it can be a good iterator and whatnot on very technical stuff. It's terrible at the artistic creative part. It's terrible at like, oh yeah, this is gonna really get people emotionally connected to your work. Like it doesn't know. But on the technical stuff, like on technical writing, or like if you're creating a story and like, does this make sense? Do the plot points make sense? Right? Are they logical in terms of like, will people understand them as a full story kind of things? And even then, it gets into a gray area.
That's true too.
Yeah. So
I definitely agree with you in saying like I mean, technology is a tool in general, right? Because I mean, like what you said, it's definitely it changes an environment with innovation. I know even when I was in my undergrad and having to do a 15-year analysis paper, and that was based on technology, and that was like the theory of technology moves 15 years from where you're at now. So what are you expecting something to happen, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, if we already got to do that, and now technology is only getting faster. It's really shorter than 5 years. I believe now it's like two or 3 years. If you're behind, now you're kind of in the obsolete, and it's already going somewhere, right?
Uh-huh.
And so it is knowing you're gonna. It is good to understand a tool, right? Understand how it can be
Mhm.
used. And I think for me personally, I think for artists, it's not worrying about the art as much as the business. It probably can help
Mhm.
you thinking about a contract to help protect your IP, or at least looking over a contract or giving you the basis of where you can start and go. But templates, not the answer, right?
Yeah.
And I like the way you it kind of scared me a little bit, made me think about the Matrix when you're thinking about what you said, how you broke down the algorithm of AI, where it is an algorithm. We're dealing with chatbots. We're dealing with things that are still needing to take in more code and more information, and still does not think on its own, and does not um have an emotional or even interpreting, right? So even when you're saying make this engaging and warm and right in the email, it's only doing so much. It takes you reading it to really look at it and then press send and add what you gotta, add your own flavor to it. Because if you don't, it just you people know what genuine. I feel like more and more with technology, you understand what's a genuine interaction, right? And you
Mhm.
said this here with influence and in just community. I think it brings back to let people know influence in before as an economy viewpoint has always been there.
Yeah.
It started in person, and now we're going into a point of having that digital piece, but it's always going to have a human element because I know for me, like what you said earlier, some of the people that I follow, I don't follow them. I follow them because I'm part of their community. I don't follow them because of just a video or something else. It's like going back to the theaters. If they suggest somebody or suggest another platform, even in the case of social media, I might go to that platform if they're there. Right. And then I
Mhm.
might find some other people around, and I'm gonna take that suggestion to find other people that I might be a part of their community too. But it is community building. If you don't build that community, nobody's gonna buy nothing from you. Nobody's going to come to your shows. Nobody's going to engage with your platform. And you can't be an influencer if you can't even, influence the community, right? In the end.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that is one of the I do like the way you kind of just touched on all that right there.
Mhm.
So now, and this is gonna be my last question before I open up to a Q&A. Um, are there any upcoming projects, opportunities, or events you would like to share with us that is supporting local creators?
Yeah, I think so. From arts perspective, we have our the Funny Fiesta, our annual comedy
Yeah.
festival, is going to be taking submissions, I believe, in starting in May. The festival will be in September, but we take submissions now, and so we can get the lineup ready and solidified. So if you're a performing artist with any comedic bent, right? We've had of course stand up, but that's part of it, right? Stand up, improv,
Mhm.
theater, dance, burlesque, drag, poetry, music, right? We've had a ton of performing artists, and we really, really value the fact that our festival is one of the few that is truly a multidisciplinary comedy festival around the country. Most of them are just stand up, but we do everything. If you got a performing art that is funny, like
Mhm.
submit, right? It's yeah. So that's one. Another one, we just closed. We just we're about to start a fellowship round now, so we have our folks who are already in. But later in the summer, we're going to be opening up applications for our fall fellowship for adults 18 and plus. And essentially, it's an opportunity to learn business skills, right? Marketing, business strategy, proposal writing, strategic planning, all that stuff, like give you a foundation. So if you're creative who's like, I want to jump in and make this like like really work on the business, or I just started my business, but I don't really know where to go from here, right? Um,
Mhm.
and we also will have over the next several months, thanks to a partnership with y'all, the Creative Industries Division, we are going to be having a few one-off workshops. Like in the first Saturday of April, I'll be teaching a grant and proposal writing for creatives. Um, it's $5, and even if that's a barrier, just contact us, and we'll let you in at no cost. But essentially, it's a 3-hour workshop on how do you respond to grants, calls for art, residencies, fellowships,
Mhm.
in a way that is compelling and will respond to what the reviewer, what the foundation or funder or whoever uh, will be interested in. So we'll have that, and then we'll also have a few other one-off workshops on some marketing, some business planning, things like that. And so folks can check us out. That we'll have between the grant and proposal writing one, and the other ones will have 4 more between now and the end of June.
Okay. Thank you so much for that, Jeff. And now I'm gonna open it up for any questions.
I don't think I have any questions, but I think it was really informative, and so it was good to meet you virtually, Jeff, and hope our paths cross again. I will definitely. I know I think I dropped a ping on LinkedIn, but I don't know if you're active on there to connect. But I mean, if you put your email in the chat, I can put my email in the chat. But I'd love to stay in touch and just, I'm doing the April 11th event of this same series, so would just like to, stay in touch and network and see if there's ways we can. Perfect. If we, oh, well, that I could have probably guessed it. That one. It would have been right. As a
You never know.
journalist.
You never know. Could be
Exactly.
Andersen at, or it could be Jay Anderson, or yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, I'd
Exactly.
love. Thanks for joining, Monica. I'd love to. What can I ask? What kind of what art mediums you work in?
So I actually work in cultural tourism. So I
Oh, cool.
help museums, Indian tribes. My background, I moved to New Mexico to take on the job of marketing Indian tribes, cultural tourism, their cultural centers. And then about 3 years ago, I left them. I'm still partners with them, but I left to start my own agency. And
Very
so, yeah, so I do a lot of marketing outreach. And I mean, this is not the place for me to pitch, but like if you ever need me, and I'm
Yeah.
not for
Oh no,
fee, but
this is
like
the
if you
place.
want me to come in and do my thing for free, I'm happy to offer that if that's of assistance or interest to you. As I work with a lot of, again, kind of those Indian tribey communities that are trying to figure out their next step in marketing their tourism programs for, celebrating and expanding their culture.
sure. Yeah. Send me an email, and yeah, I'm kind of on LinkedIn. I'm like there, but
Yeah.
like I check in like maybe once a month. So yeah, email is probably a better way to get in touch with me. But yeah, I'd love to talk further.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, it's just really, these have been really great. I'm sad that not more people are attending these events. They're really been like, I've really learned a lot through the 3 speakers I've heard. So
Oh, well, thanks for
yeah,
joining today.
yeah, absolutely.
And the good thing is we record them, so luckily for anybody
Cool.
who don't end up showing up and actually being a part of it, they'll be able to see it on our social media. We're gonna cut it up
Oh,
and
cool.
have little
Okay, great.
snippets on our places like that. So they're gonna be able to at least still see and get some of the same information that you got as well.
Nice. Yeah, was really, I didn't even know Arts Hub existed. Of course, we could write a Bible with the things I don't know existed, but this was really
Same.
helpful to really kind of expand my own horizons too.
Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah. And Arlen, I can't be at the
And
1
that's the
p.m.
great thing.
today.
That's
I
the
have something else. I have a prior commitment, so you will not see me this afternoon, unfortunately.
no problem. Shawnee is actually the one that's going to be taking over
Okay.
the 1 p.m. today.
Okay.
So
All right.
I'm actually, yeah, I'll be occupied myself too. So,
Okay.
um, but no, thank you. And I think this is one of the things that highlights the title of our creative season is collaboration and creativity, because it is knowing that in New Mexico we got a lot of things that are here. It's just hard to find it at
Yeah.
times. So like now you got a new connection, and that can lead into more collaboration for our creative economy and our spaces.
Yep. Exactly.
And with that said, I guess we could go ahead and end uh this meeting.
Awesome. Well, thank
I
you so
hope
much for
y'all have
having
a
me.
Perfect.
wonderful day.
Yeah, you too,
Nice
Arlen.
to
Yeah,
meet you.
definitely, Jeff. Thank you so much for participating, and thank you so much, Monica, for participating in the past 3 conversations. And we look forward to when you are here on April 11th doing yours.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, I'll have to
See you
come
later.
check that out.
I will, I'll send you a reminder in my email.
Perfect.
Cool. Cool. Take
All
care.
right, see y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.